Good morning, everyone. Everyone having a great day so far? Oh, there's a thumbs up over there. That's good. So I haven't had any coffee, so excuse me. So in this session, we're talking about how we're going to get, really it's how to get Windows off the desktop, because the desktop doesn't need Windows anymore. And it's all about digital transformation. Everyone's talking about digital transformation. We've just heard about it at the keynote. But at the desktop, who do we need to change, and why do we need to change, and what to change to, and how are we going to do it? And is there an easier way to do it than just getting a USB stick and hoping that an install might happen? I'm not sure if you're familiar with the analogy of pets versus cattle. It's quite a common one. And pets, desktop systems become pets after a while. The users love them. They're looked after. They're well fed. They're groomed. Expensive. But what you need to do is turn them into cattle. Now pass that around. This is a common decoration. I've got a USB battery pack. It's a common decoration you see of people's desktops. People nest with their desktop system. And they have little lights. And actually, Gareth, you want to throw this? I think I've got do I have a battery pack? It's most amusing if you plug them in and flip the visor. So people they nest on their desktops. They use a desktop to have all their personal files, but also most importantly, they also have a lot of. There you go. There it is. No, you cannot. Well, I can give you the Amazon SKU. His name's Neil, by the way, for obvious reasons. So there's this whole nesting instinct, and people are very reluctant to change the desktop that they use. And it usually causes a great deal of chaos, even with a minor Windows upgrade. But if you turn them into cattle, then you get into a world where they have a minimal maintenance, and they can easily be replaced. Essentially, if the cattle, just shoot them in the head. But I wouldn't suggest that with users, although you might feel like it sometimes. They become they're much more easy to manage because you're herding them. And they become more productive. But why do you want to go through this process of transformation in the first place? And that's because the desktop is changing. So instead of having, now if you ever looked at the Microsoft logo, it's the 4 squares, and actually each one of those squares represents one of the 4 major Office applications. So you've got Word and PowerPoint and Excel. What's the other? Outlook is the Outlook. So I haven't used all those products for so long that I've forgotten what they are. But each color represents. So in fact, Windows is just a launch pad for Office, and Microsoft themselves are changing away from Office on the desktop via 365. So you've got the corporate applications as well as Office itself is turning into server-based HTML5 apps. Any legacy Windows applications usually can be ported to an RDP terminal server environment, and if they can't be, then it kind of needs to be rewritten. And the Java application, of course, doesn't care because it'll run on anything if it's been done properly. So if you remove all those things, then the question is, where is the data being held? And you'll find a lot of systems have a lot of personal computers in corporations have a lot of corporate data embedded on the hard disk itself, which is a risk, because if the hard disk fails, you've lost information, but equally, you don't know what information you've lost. The manager, you might know what you've lost, but if it's something important, are you going to tell your manager that I just lost, those spreadsheets that are so important to you? No, you'll just recreate them. There's also there's a desire, especially since the Windows XP migration away from Windows XP, there's a desire to extend the life of the hardware. And that's understandable, especially considering one of our customers has just migrated all their hardware away from, got new hardware, new Windows 7 systems, and they're looking at a Windows 10 upgrade, and they've been told by Microsoft, well, the hardware you've just bought and done the refresh across your entire enterprise of something like 50,000 systems, it's not quite good enough for Windows 10. So there's also a desire to save dollars, lots of cash. But it's not just cash in terms of the replacement of the machine or the changing the operating system, but it's all the deliverable of moving new systems into desktops, the upheaval that causes, the new user training that's required. So there's lots of reasons to transform. But of course, you're always going to have problems with users. And there's some facts here. Most computer users, if anyone is disagreeing or wants to ask any questions, please go ahead and interject and complain about if I'm getting any of this stuff wrong. But most computer users can't touch type. Most users of Office can't use Office. But they'll defend it to the death. You try and give them LibreOffice, and they'll go, but I don't know how to use it. Well, you don't know how to use it. Okay, so can you create a template in Microsoft Word that's going to be used? And what do you mean? What's a template? This is a cue for a joke, a really bad joke. How many social workers does it take to change a light bulb? Anyone? Only one, but the light bulb has to want to change. And that's what you have to do with users. So they hate change. They like their little nest. They don't want to move the nest. They want to leave the nest. All they want to do is sit and do their work. And they'll resist it at every possible opportunity. But they do love Facebook. Now, I don't use Facebook very much simply because I'm just too busy. But when I'm bewildered by the interface. But because people want to use Facebook, they learn how to use it. And they do things that's like, I look, how do I actually get my, oh, forget it, I'll just go back to work. So you need to be prepared because they can actually learn new things, but they have to want to learn those new things. And then we come to the choice of, well, if you're going to upgrade, what are you going to upgrade to? What are you going to transform to? And Windows 10, and that is probably going to require a hardware upgrade and truck roll and migration of data and all these horrible things. Thin client, now that's almost definitely going to require a hardware upgrade unless you're doing some sort of tricky sort of CD-based something, network-based thing. Apple products, now that's definitely a hardware upgrade. But it's interesting. It's also cost. It's significantly more expensive than any Windows product. But there is something in the whole Apple thing that I'll get to in a moment. Or you could just, how about an in-place upgrade with Linux? Now, it's hard, isn't it? I mean, anyone here done this kind of stuff, network-based, thin client, any kind of Linux, yep. And how's your experience?
Mine was pretty positive.
Okay. How many users and what?
Well, we have about, staff, we have about 1,000 staff.
Right.
Yeah, we didn't do them all, though. We just did it, we're a school division, so we just did it in certain labs. We did it for certain people.
Yeah.
Where it made sense. So, yeah, I mean, we had some experience with SUSE, so it was positive.
Yeah. Yeah. So it doesn't have to be hard. You don't have to, now when I say an in-place upgrade, that's putting Linux on top of Windows, getting rid of Windows altogether, and just replacing it wholesale. Now that's fine to do in a small business because you can walk around with a CD or a USB stick and do the installation, and that's fine. But what about if you're looking at a bank with 20,000 users, or in a case study, which I'll talk about in a second, 7,500 users across 900 branches, all requiring overnight updates, bandwidth challenged environment where they had, some of the branches had 128K circuits going back to the main systems. But let's just take a quick detour, and that's the wrong slide. I'm not sure what it's doing there. Have I gone backwards? Let's just go. Let's go through that. Now I've gone too far. There we go. Strange. Okay. So make a positive change. So what is a better way to start your day? Is it something that looks like that? Or is it something that looks like that?
What are you going for? I got a question.
Yeah.
I never really have much of a problem doing the upgrade. But the problem I have when it comes to the office is we have a lot of customers who send us Word documents that has macros that doesn't support my LibreOffice.
Well, that's an interesting question. You seem to be. Have you got any questions about that? That's
with the clients that we have. That can be a problem as well. That's a real curveball. I mean, for the most part, most document creation, LibreOffice is perfectly suitable. But you're right. It's when external data comes in that's not from that source and has some sort of customization, like macros.
Correct.
Where we have similar problems.
But yeah, and so that's kind of that. We need to bring in some of the LibreOffice team to discuss that. But one of the things is if you eliminate that, if you eliminate the Word macros and the Office macros, then you're going to be creating a safer environment anyway. Because it's the attack.
Eliminate it altogether.
Yeah.
Just sticking with LibreOffice altogether.
Yeah.
We have two machines that actually runs Office because that's the problem.
Yeah.
We needed to. We have a couple customers that sends us.
Yeah. Well, we can.
I guess it's inevitable. Really.
Yeah.
We've run up for over 7 years on a purely open source product, and we started ahead of that, and never ever had any problems with interchanging any kind of data, be it spreadsheets or Word documents or what have you, with other external parties, and those ones using Office, but we weren't using macros.
Yeah. So this is actually my desktop now. So and that's a screenshot.
There is actually one other scenario, which is when you've got a third-party provider that might be injecting data into spreadsheets, like Bloomberg.
Yeah, that's a special case. That's another case. But they could do that on an RDP session. So migrating everything that's a Windows dependency to something that's RDP.
What Linux is this?
It's SUSE. Yeah. So doesn't look like SUSE. It looks like, well, hopefully it looks like a Mac. Because this is a bit of a detour because it's really is. This is the interface that dominates all of our lives at the moment. I mean, if everyone picks their phone up, you'll see the same interface. If you pick up a tablet, it's the same interface. You pick up a Mac, it's the same interface. It's easy to use a single touch to get to things. And here we go, and it's a launch bar. I think they call it the launch bar. I'm not sure. And that's a phone over the right. That's a tablet over the left. So why not bring that kind of interface into the corporate workstation? And there's a number of reasons for that. One is it's easier and faster to use. It's a single touch to get to where you want, or a tap. But you can leverage the desirability of Apple and kind of give them something that's Apple-like, not Apple Light, but Apple-like. And we, in our experience, users want to use this kind of interface because they see it as a positive change. That's just our experience. And well, I call it the aspirational desktop because everyone aspires to have a Mac. If you were to do a big migration project, I'd really recommend, and this come into this a bit later on as well, that you do some A/B testing. Is everyone familiar with A/B concepts? Yeah. So you basically give two groups and give them different things to try, and whichever one vote, they'll all come back with feedback, and you can hopefully migrate all the feedback into something that is unified. Right, so where were we then? We were like talking about an in-place upgrade. So as we're just saying, the important thing is have something that's attractive that the users want to use, rather than foisting something that they don't want to use onto them. And you have to make that a goal, because it's not. There's no point having one engineer going, well, I think this is what everyone wants, because that's, I think, sounds like what Microsoft do. Although maybe they've got too many opinions at Microsoft. So you involve some users, some of the design team, some of the techies, management, and get just moments of their time, involve them and say, this is how we're going to be working for the next 5 years. And you'll get some good feedback, just because it's a variety of people working in different ways and different applications and methodologies. And then going back to the cattle analogy, and the cattle, the cow that was on screen was something that would be, if it got sick, you'd get rid of it. After, or you try, and you'd probably spend a little bit of money on it, but then if that's not going to work, you just get rid of it and buy another cow or bring another one into your herd. You do the same thing with machines by removing all local dependencies. Everything that binds that machine into the user, the grouping that user has, the location, everything that's embedded on that hard disk, you move to the network. So all local data should be that's important should be moved to the network. And getting sort of more into that, you can then, once a user logs on, you can selectively synchronize, or you can mount or synchronize certain directories under the home folder. And that means using something like csync. Is everyone familiar with csync? Does everyone know about rsync? Yeah, so rsync is a bidirectional synchronization tool, and csync is a unidirectional. And that means you can have, even in a situation where the network goes down, you can still have operational staff because they have a synchronized copy of their local folder, just like, what does Microsoft call it? Roaming profile-like behavior. So you can do that kind of thing. creating, again, everyone heard of etc. Skell folder? Yeah, that's one predictable person asking all the questions there. So that's a folder under, that's a folder in every Linux system. That when you log a user in, it gets a whole bunch of files, hidden files and folders laid down in the home folder. And that means you can populate all the things that every user is going to want or need inside that folder. And every time a new user logs on, they just get it automatically. And it's very handy. And we were doing some things with our case study around that. What were some of the things they had? There's things like there's a local program that gives you the memory, disk space, and network connectivity and all that. Yeah, so all the desktop customizations you can put under Skell. Second?
Or Concrete, yeah, which is the equivalent of.
Yeah.
What's the equivalent of that?
CONK. Yeah. Yeah. And that's a good tool to use if you're in a situation where you want to VNC it onto someone's screen, and you can see instantly what the environment looks like, because it's got all the statistics of the machine displayed as part of the desktop. SSD is a great way to bring the Unix and Linux systems onto a domain, so they become fully fledged domain members with Kerberos authentication. That just, once you've done that, it just makes domain joining and rejoining simple, really simple. It takes a little bit of work to get done, but once it's done, you'll go through a process where you can start a build, and by the time the build finishes, it can be a fully fledged domain member in your Active Directory environment. So we're going to go through all that, but why would we go there? Well, there's one good reason. You won't get any more of those, although I'm not even sure if they still do the blue screen anymore. I don't think that. Yeah, it's just hidden. So it says. So the Linux desktop brings all these great things. It's manageability. It's the because it's got low. It's got a low. You don't need a lot of hardware to run it. A Raspberry Pi is a good example that has been discussed. You can keep your desktops alive a lot longer. Hence the whole, this goes back into the disposable thing. So you can extend the lifetime of a workstation by 2 or 3 times its original design life. We had a customer that they were using. Not that you've got any personal experience with them, but they were, and they used those for 10 years. And the only reason why anyone had to touch them was because their Java applications running out of memory. Otherwise, once they got to a point where if a machine died and was 9 years old, you wouldn't bother fixing it. You just replace it with something new, or pull one from the pool of replacement machines. But you also get increased security. You get increased auditability, which is another thing that we're working with, which is being able to say to every single one of the systems, is this the same software build on this system as is the defined software build that you've installed on it in the first place. Also, with Linux, you can reuse it after hours. So, like, what would you use? Well, maybe containers. Maybe if you're doing batch jobs or something like that, You can wake up all the machines, run a container that does something, and then shut it down when people start working. You've got, in a large environment, you've got thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of cores unused overnight. And the way to do it is in a way that you don't need to send a truck out with a bunch of PCs and a bunch of engineers to get it fixed, get it installed. And to do that, you need to use multi-tiered repositories. And what I mean by that is it's dev, test, and production environments. And the dev is simply what comes in from the internet repositories, and it's that big. Then that's just the mirror of the official repositories. Then you have a test environment where you can test that against the corporate software that you have to run that's customized, as opposed to what comes in from the repositories. You can automate that testing. There's a variety of tools. I'm sure that SUSE have a bunch of automated testing tools, I'm sure. Test your build on every single piece of distinctly different hardware there is. So if you've got different models of systems, because you've been buying in batches, you can get one or a couple of those, bring them into a lab and just test your build across every single one of them and just make sure the functionality works. So then you can be the assuredness of the build working when it gets deployed you'll know that there's a 99% it's going to work on every system, or 99.9%, rather than getting an issue when you run it for the first time and it doesn't work. Chris?
I hear what you're saying with that, but we have like a lot of rackables that we run in 11.3 and 11.4, and we just upgrade most of them to 11.4.
Mm-hmm.
But some of them we try to do 12.1, and it doesn't support the hardware.
Okay, 12. So that's
we try to upgrade
SLES or
SLES 12.1.
Okay.
And it says it would actually fail during the install, where it doesn't see in the hard drive, or it doesn't. We need to prove it. Okay.
Yeah. Do you have the same issue, or?
No, I'm the release manager for the desktop.
Ah, okay. Okay, yeah. And then you have a production repository, which is where you draw your images from, having tested them, having tested the corporate build, making sure that everything works from test. You just start drawing down the mirrors. And then you start doing interesting things like waking up the estate using Pixie Boot. Anyone here with experience of Pixie Boot? Yeah, 1, 2, 3. No one else? Okay, so Pixie Boot, I'll explain, you'll see it on every single system, I think, now. It's been around for 10, 15, maybe 20 years. You send a packet to a machine and like magic, it wakes it up. And then you can use different tools. You can do different tools to build the image over a variety of means. Basically, it boots the machine goes, you've just woken me up, I need to find my install source or my boot source, and then you have a server that says, yes, I'm your boot source, and it downloads a Linux kernel and does whatever is dictated by the Linux kernel. If it happens to be running an install image, then you can use YAST and a file called an auto-YAST file that can custom build the machine according to what the file says. And it's an XML file, very, very, well, in fact, every time you install YAST or every time you install SUSE or SLES or OpenSUSE, it offers you the chance of saving, can't remember the exact wording, the auto installation file after completion. And that file is the XML file. And if you want to create that machine completely all over again, you just run a setup and use that file as the pre-seed. And yeah, Don is great. He doesn't want to be out in the heat. But if you're doing that kind of work across a large enterprise where you've got multiple branches, you've also got the question of what happens to your environment if the network goes down. And we've had this with the same customer, which we're going to get onto in a moment. But what happens when either there's low bandwidth or no bandwidth to your users? And deploying across a wide area network brings its own challenges in that you can cause an outage if you're deploying gigabytes to 1,000 machines over a 256K line or something like that. So you can cause problems if you don't manage the bandwidth usage. And then once, of course, the machine's built, then it'll go, oh, I'm now here. How do I manage my updates? Where do I get my updates from? It goes out the repositories, and suddenly you've got another gigabyte per machine that gets downloaded because the image you've got is old in comparison to what's happened since. And you multiply that by the number of machines per subnet, and hopefully you can't hear that, you can't read that. So you have to manage the bandwidth. And what happens if the branch business has a network outage? What do you do? What is your business in the business of doing? If it's a branch, if it's a bank, everyone's down because everyone in a branch in a bank branch relies on the computer network. But one of the same customer, Allied Irish Bank that we were working with, they had all their client mainframe and the systems that were connected to the mainframe had a so-called disconnected mode. So if the network was down, they could still accept deposits and I think maybe withdrawals to a certain amount on the basis that they'll take the records. And whenever they got to a point where the network came up, the applications would sync back with the mainframe and say, these are the transactions we've had. And so you have to, in that situation, it's less and less common. But of course, as everyone's getting more and more network connected, you have even an occasional outage is going to have a lot more impact if you haven't built that kind of thinking into your application architecture. So a disconnected mode is important, and another one of our branches, one of our clients went completely from this kind of environment to a terminal server environment within clients, and whenever they have an outage, everything is dead. They have to wait, and they're IP phones as well, so no one can call them. There's nothing that can be done. So we've got a solution for all those problems. At the moment, it's called Snoopy. Any suggestions? And the name comes from a type of plant that's used as ground cover, and it's pretty and attractive, and it grows very quickly. And it combines a lot of what you've already got, which is Wake on LAN or Pixie Boot. The workstations can handle that. All of you, I'd imagine, have some sort of LDAP or Active Directory infrastructure, which is a key component of any network and is a key component of how we manage this. Gigabit network is important, but I don't think anyone doesn't have gig now. If you did, I can sell you some networking kit. And the F12 key. Because the F12 key is really, really important. So if you've got keyboards that don't have F12, leave the room now. So you have to have also a modicum of some information about the estate of machines. And that's actually just initially the MAC address of every system. And if you don't have that, we can get that for you through one of the processes that we run. And we use it. We use the unique identifying information about workstations so we can make them manageable, reloadable, and groupable. Everyone's is familiar with, I would imagine everyone's familiar with Active Directory and how you have the users and groups, and you've got the users with users in their groups. And we don't introduce, but the system introduces the concept of your computers go into groups, and the groups then manage what type of build that the system gets. But of course, to do things like wake on LAN, excuse me, you need to know the MAC address so you can wake it up and get it to do what you need it to do. So we introduce a build profile. And that a build profile is a combination, I'm not sure if this is, yeah, of the network, the old app group, and the pre-seed file. So if you're in a banking situation, and I keep on using that as an analogy because it's a good one, you might have tellers that just do one set of tasks, and they have one set of applications, and they're only ever going to use that. But then you might have a bunch of workers that are back office workers that do scanning and things like that. So they have they need to have scanning software. Task, we have so the task workers and different task workers, and then there's general workers that do a whole lot of things, and then so each group of machines could be loaded with a different profile. Do you? Yeah, so that's.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
So this is your baby?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's what I figured. Are you there?
Say again? Yeah.
Okay.
So this is the case study, and right. So this is a project that we were involved with, 7,500 teller workstations across 900 branches, and there were 2 people managing it. That's it. Now, of course, that doesn't include the application support, but that was a separate team, separate bunch of people that would be managing that support. But we were actually managing, upgrading, changing on probably doing reloads on reloads. I mean, completely disk wiping and replacing with a new system, probably about once a month, roughly, I think. And we've evolved. That was managed by the bank with a whole bunch of scripts, and a bunch of people would come into in the middle of the night and run some changes, run some scripts, and make some changes to the E directory, and step back and hope it all worked. We took all that and changed it, and now we've been asked to do the same thing again. So we've turned it into an application. And it's all evolved from what we learned doing that. And there's that's the smallest branch. Now, can anyone pronounce that name? Can anyone read it at the back? Enistimon in County Clare, 2 users, 1 teller, 128 KB bandwidth. And we upgraded it just like all the others, on demand, overnight, and none of us went to that branch. We never went to any branch. The only places we went was the head office. Now I can do a quick demo right at this point, but I'll just very quickly. know we're running short of time. There we go. Is that way? No. There we go. So this is actually just pre-recorded, and this is actually a machine, and this is real time in terms of it's not sped up or anything. So we just shut it down from Windows, and it's doing the pre-seed. And apologies to the SUSE guys in the audience. This is actually one that's using OpenSUSE because it's the. But we've got, it works with SLED, it works with SLES, works with every variety of SUSE there is. But to do that, we'll let that run in the background to find my mouse. There it is. I'll just so this is the console of Snoopy, and basically in this particular demo system we've got 38 systems in total, and we can look at all those hosts if we like, and some of them have got information and some of them don't. Some of them have come, information has come from Snoopy. And all of those you can wake. So you can send a wake command and that will wake up the hardware and it'll boot. That one there is one of the ones I think we're running right now. These entities here have come from an agent on the Windows systems called BigFix, which is an IBM product, and that just goes out and gets all the physical data that exists about the system and tells the administrator what's on the box. We can generates a report. You can upload the report. It goes into that table, and then you can wake those machines up and replace them.
So this interface is for you or for the customer? Once you have implemented that?
The customer can just can run this.
Okay.
So I've got now. I don't have the screenshots that I was going to include in this, but upgradeable hosts are hosts that we know the MAC address of and that sit inside a particular LDAP group. So Active Directory, you say you want these 10 systems to become Snoopy systems. You just drag them into that group, and that's it. They're managed by that group, and they've all got MAC addresses, as you can see, and some of them have been updated and some of them haven't. Some of them are still Windows. There's one there that's running, which is actually the system we've just booted. Define expensive. How much money don't you want to spend? We can talk about that, but we're trying to make it as economical as possible. I think usually what happens is the consultancy that you need to really make it all sing and make your Linux desktops match as much as possible what you are used to is usually costs more money, but unless you've got some very good Linux people or some good people in there. Doing things like having access to, so most applications should be started by a launcher script and getting all those little details right and spending time so the launcher script will launch your mail client with the right details and the right, there's lots of little things. And once you get those right, it becomes a lot easier, but you've got to spend that time and money. Yep.
So if
I'm understanding this right, if it was a Windows machine, there'd be like an initial audit done, and Snoopy is integrated with the directory as well. And once the initial audit is done, you can add the machines to an LDAP group and then kick off some kind of pixie boot to convert.
That's it.
Cool.
Yeah, and it integrates. So we can the infrastructure tab here. You can actually see these are LDAP or Active Directory groups, and they've got the components that you need, and you can just press that button, and that send wake-up signals to all those systems, and hopefully, although this is a disconnected network, they'll be waking up and getting reloaded, or not just necessarily reloaded. You can do updates as well. So you can do a nightly. Well, we're getting to that. You can do a nightly update, so it gets all of the fixes and the security updates on a regular schedule overnight, so it doesn't disturb the user.
So how is this different from CCM?
I'm not familiar with CCM.
That works?
Not familiar with that. But have you got any? Gareth?
No, CCM.
Well, I'd say it's cheaper.
Well, CCM pretty much does where it gets all your updates. You can manage all your desktops. You set the time frame where it does the tests. You put few desktops in the test mode.
Yeah.
Where it sends the update to them, and if they don't
How much does it
break
cost?
within a day, I don't know. I don't deal with the cost
Okay.
involved, and my boss does. I'm just a worker.
We've got a.
I think this is a totally different case scenario unless you're also using CCM to manage Linux in some way. This is a total conversion tool.
Yeah.
And a management tool. I understand that CCM has Windows. It's mostly for these days. I think most people use it for Windows patch management, and they do some Linux too, and some very minimal Mac OS X because the tools just aren't mature. But to me, your tool serves a totally different need.
Yeah, it is to.
Conversion and then management tool after the audit and conversion.
Yeah. So this is the update going ahead. So this has taken the pre-seed file, and it's doing that, and it's taken a customized pre-seed file. So one of the things I haven't mentioned is that if you're doing 20,000 workstations and moving them from Windows to a Linux environment and joining those Linux systems to the domain, anyone identify a small problem that might bring? 20,000 ghost machines that you don't know which is which, and you have to delete, and are you going to delete the right ones? Well, this will update, this will join the Linux machine with the domain, to the domain with the same host name that the original machine was. So we take that information from Active Directory, and so this is, so in the directory here, these systems, all this has actually come from, it's cached from Active Directory, and these are the Active Directory names. And that one, once it's complete, will be a Snoopy managed system with, unfortunately, a Linux system called WinXP. but the other thing we do is there's networks. So you define your network subnets, and that's a way to enable the sending the Pixie boot packets only to the networks where the machines live, rather than sending broadcasts across your entire network, because you have to do things like modify your routers and to allow those kind of things to come through. So you don't want too much broadcast traffic. So this will say, well, all these machines sit in that subnet, so we'll wake up those systems.
What are some of the sizes of networks which you have converted in terms of number of machines?
Well, we're doing the Allied Irish Bank is 7,500.
Smaller ones?
We've got a proof of concept with a university in London, which is, it's 200 initially.
So say let's take 200 as a base figure. But how much testing and preparation and post transformation time is needed before you can say, okay, this is settled and we can move back?
that's dependent really on your level of expertise and your. We could get something up and running in with probably 2-3 days of consultancy, but it'll be very basic, and then you have to work everything else out after that, like launches. If you want just to migrate Windows systems to Linux and you don't care about the applications that sit on those systems, then that's minimal. But if you want a full service where it's like, well, we've got to replace Outlook, we've got to replace this, and we've got to start the mail client in a certain way, and we've got these other applications, then that sort of is like, okay, we need to work with you on how to do the launcher scripts, unless, again, you've got the in-house expertise to do that.
In terms of POCs, when you do that, is there any prerequisites that you define? And I mean, obviously the prerequisites, but what are the prerequisites in those kind of scenarios when somebody's just want to test Windows to Linux migration capability, not the application? First phase.
What is the? I missed the first couple of words.
What's the prerequisites?
A prerequisite, okay.
Because I think you mentioned you can do that remotely as well.
Well, not yet. So because that's another question that customers have is, well, can you do this from the cloud? And if you say that, they'll go, we don't want to give you our Active Directory. So generally, the tendency at the moment seems to be that people will have and this is going to the second boot cycle before it shuts itself down. The tendency seems to be that people think that they'd like to have some sort of cloud management, but it ends up being some sort of virtual appliance that they can turn on and off to access to their Active Directory if they want, or they can keep the Active Directory ports open. And that runs on SLES 12.1, 12.2 probably, as of tomorrow. And this is the dreaded moment. Every now and then, my machine freezes, and I have to reboot it.
What's 11?
It's 11.
I have one question while you do that.
Yeah.
I saw when you brought up this situation with the blue screen for Windows.
Yeah.
We tend to have that same problem with Linux.
Okay.
Where we had a power failure and our system went out hard. And when we got it back out, we have a few systems that we have a corruption in the boot load.
Okay.
So, I mean, there are times we can probably reload it, put a disk back in or reload, try to repair it, and it will repair. But most of the time, we have to start back from scratch because it just went out too hard.
Yeah.
Is there easier way to fix to get around that when it comes to?
Well, because without the system, you just press F12 and it'll reload the system. So you power it on, F12, it goes out to the network, gets its information about what kind of build it is based on its MAC address, and just loads the system.
So with Snoopy, that's what Snoopy would do.
Yeah. And you can engineer a lot of this all by yourself, but what we've done is we've been thinking very hard about it and have brought all the thinking that we've had during that project and after it. No, I don't want to.
If the principle is that the individual nodes,
Thanks.
the individual machines are all the same as per the cattle analogy, then any fault like that, every machine can reload the machine over the network. So with regards to your scenario, certainly what we've had success with is that any machine on startup, press F12, opt for a network boot, it'll go and find the seed server and recreate the machine from scratch, which, if all the data is in the network and the applications are delivered over the network, then you end up with a situation where you have that platform that the user uses afresh. Very much like if you have an experience with OpenStack, the SUSE OpenStack. reinstalled and done, sets it back to day one. So that's the emphasis there on the 12.
I'm just trying to. Okay. Unfortunately, I can't.
It's 11 now anyway.
Yeah, we've run out of time. So it's if anyone wants to catch up with me anywhere outside now or later, I can go through that whole demo with you again and explain the interface. The final slide, which I can't seem to bring up, is basically a large environment, and then the question is, how are you going to manage? And we've got the tools to manage your environment.